Today I'm going to offer you 7 genuine flight booking hacks that could potentially save you hundreds or thousands of dollars with no scams and no myths. YouTube and the internet are filled with all kinds of crazy ideas about how you can save money on flights, but can you actually trust any of it? I've already talked about the best websites for booking your flights and for booking round the world trips on previous videos, so go and check those out. But first, let's talk about some of the myths that you'll often hear that just aren't true. And the number one myth I hear all the time is that somehow using incognito mode will save you money.
So a little bit of background about me. I'm an economist in my day job, something I've been doing for 17 years. Now, economists like to talk about demand and supply for good reason. It's the basic driver of prices. Airlines set prices based on demand for flights on those routes and the supply of alternatives. This is why on routes with lots of competition, prices stay low for longer, and on routes with little competition, like domestic routes from smaller towns to major hubs, prices are higher faster. Airlines at any time are charging the most they think they can get you to pay. They know people booking closer to takeoff will have fewer options to choose from and may well be booking in an emergency and will therefore pay more. This is why, like hotel room prices and rental car prices, airfares rise the closer to departure you get. Ticket prices change slightly day by day for two reasons and two reasons only. Number one, fluctuating exchange rates, and number two, airlines are constantly updating pricing based on demand and supply for flights each day. You may have anecdotal evidence of that one time you searched on incognito mode and flights appeared cheaper, but there is no broad evidence that this is the case. And in my 15 years of booking flights online, I have never once booked on incognito for a better deal.
Another myth I hear a lot about is that the day you book your flights really matters. Now, that's just absolute nonsense. Airlines want you to spend money today. They don't want you to wait another week or until next week Thursday to try and get a better deal. So the day that you book your flights doesn't matter at all. Of course, the date that you travel on, your actual flight date, does matter, but we'll talk about that more later in this video. Then there are several other so-called travel hacks that I'd put in the scheme or gimmick basket rather than the myth basket. They are real things, but I'd advise against using them in most instances.
So the first gimmick then is skip lagging or hidden city ticketing. Now, skip lagging is when the price of a ticket to your desired destination is cheaper for some reason if you book a ticket that stops over in your desired destination rather than the booking seeing that as your final destination. For example, maybe I want to fly from London to Paris, but I find tickets from London to Frankfurt via Paris are cheaper, which does happen sometimes. And so I could book the flight from London to Frankfurt via Paris, but then hop off the plane in Paris, saving money. Now, this is a real thing. You could go ahead and do this, but it carries several drawbacks. These include, number one, you can't take checked-in luggage with you, as obviously this would be checked all the way through to your final destination of Frankfurt. Number two, if you have a return ticket, the second half of the ticket will typically be cancelled by the airline. Number three, while it seems anti-competitive for airlines to force you to take a second leg of a trip if you choose to bail out halfway, many airlines are updating their terms and conditions to explicitly ban skip lagging. And number four, if the unforeseen happens, such as the airline making you check in your carry-on bag or the flight being disrupted due to weather and rerouting somewhere else, you're going to find yourself out of pocket and not where you wanted to go.
So I do not recommend skip lagging, especially on international flights. But there are other gimmicks and schemes, such as bargain and error fare websites, which I also think are a bit of a gimmick.
One example of these bargain and error fare websites is Secret Flying. Now, personally, I'm signed up to the Secret Flying website just because I like getting their occasional crazy flight deal WhatsApp messages or emails with insanely cheap prices. But I have never, in maybe 4 years of being signed up, taken up an error fare or even just super cheap flight that they bring to my attention. Why not? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, airlines generally reserve the right to cancel any fare that isn't demonstrably a market price fare. This means they don't necessarily have to honor that $800 fare that they accidentally entered into their system as an $80 fare. And then secondly, most but not all the error fare flights or the super cheap bargains that come up on the website are for the very short term. As in, there's a flight to Honolulu next week that you'll need to be on. Most people are not in jobs where they can simply hop on a plane next week, but if you're retired or a digital nomad, then knock yourself out and grab a bargain.
Then thirdly, there's all the different modes that different websites have. For example, Kiwi.com even has its travel hacks section where they offer skip lagging and their nomad mode, which is really just a way of reordering the legs of your trip to try and find a good deal.
I haven't ever found it to offer an advantage over my own multi-city searches.
So we've covered 2 myths and several gimmicks, but now we want to look at some of the genuine travel and flight booking hacks.
The first hack we want to talk about is, can I get a free stopover? Now, in the good old days, many national carriers, particularly based in hubs in the Middle East and Asia, offered free hotel accommodation as a way to get you to stay in town for longer. This is generally not the case anymore. There are some exceptions. Etihad out of the United Arab Emirates still offers up to 2 nights free. Turkish and Emirates each offer 1 night for the economy class passengers under certain conditions. But then there are other airlines like Qatar Airways, which we recently booked with, who will offer you a hotel stopover upsell under the pretense that you're getting a great deal by co-booking it with your flights. When you first glance at the hotels they link to on their website, they seem quite reasonably priced and glitzy. But in my experience, you're better off booking your own accommodation. You'll find places with better reviews for the same or better prices. And so hack number 1 is, don't assume that the cheap stopover deal on a hotel from the airline is actually a good hotel or good price. Check it out on booking.com or other websites and consider your other options.
Now, if you're finding this advice useful, please click like, please subscribe so you can stay up to date with our other videos, and why don't you comment below and tell us about your travel hacks.
Hack number 2, use websites that show you cheaper days of the week to book. As I pointed out earlier, the day you book your flights doesn't matter. The general rule is earlier rather than later, but the day you fly really does matter. Google's price date grid is helpful for seeing the patterns here, or Momondo's price ribbon. The general rule is weekends are more expensive, especially Fridays if you're heading off somewhere sunny. Sundays are expensive for flying back to non-touristy destinations from most tourist spots. Hack number 3. This is why on long-haul flights, I try to book for a Thursday evening if I can. It means that by taking off Friday, I can avoid the most expensive flights. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are also good for pricing, but that's because there are less convenient times to travel. Hack number 4, the general rule is book early, but I've run some tests that show that there's usually not a big benefit to booking more than 5 months ahead. I looked at 4 long-haul routes and at booking from 1 day ahead to 11 months ahead. They showed 4 things that affect price most dramatically. Number 1, if you're traveling within a month of making your booking, you're probably going to pay a fortune. Number 2, if you're traveling anywhere at Christmas, you are going to pay a fortune. Number 3, if you're traveling in the Northern Hemisphere during the Northern Hemisphere summer holidays, you're going to pay a fortune. Number 4, beyond this, there's little, if any, benefit with booking more than 5 months in advance. Prices 5 to 9 months ahead tend to be broadly the same outside of these peak periods of Christmas and the Northern Hemisphere summer holidays.
Booking your international travel 5 months in advance has the added bonus of giving you enough time to get the most out of that trip. So check out our other videos that tell you about how to plan for those trips, how to choose what to see and do, and the various other travel hacks that we cover.
Hack number 5 follows logically from hack number 4. Book outside of school holidays if you possibly can. Hack 6 is that the absolute best time to travel anywhere in the world is mid-September to mid-October. This time gets you the best prices, avoids the crowds, especially in the Northern Hemisphere with schools back underway, and the weather is settled and warm. But it also works in the Southern Hemisphere, which by then is warming up for the summer. And finally, hack number 7, consider booking your domestic connections separately. Now, we live in a small town served by only one airline to get to our nearest major hubs. I've found that if I enter our hometown airport into Skyscanner or Google Flights and search for return trips, very often the price including the domestic leg of the trip will be hundreds or even thousands of dollars more than if we booked that domestic leg separately. Now, there is a risk to this approach, especially if the airlines for your international leg and the domestic leg are not in the same alliance. You could find yourself having to fork out for a new ticket if your domestic leg gets delayed on your way out or your international leg gets delayed on the way home. Generally, in my experience, when you're flying on the same alliance, there is more grace if the connecting flight is delayed.
So I hope this brief look at travel myths, schemes, and hacks has been useful for you. Please click like, please subscribe so you can stay up to date with our new videos as they come out, and please comment below if you have anything to add to the conversation. We'll talk again soon. Take care.